And welcome, everybody. I'm Robert Adichie, and I am with Ulisses Spiele, Ulisses International, and we're here to read the Orrorsh Day One Adventures adventure from Day One Adventures. But first, I wanted to point out to you, in case you missed it, we've got the Torg Eternity Tharkold crowdfunding happening now until the 11th of July. Sorry, the 14th of July. So it's got a few more days, 11 more days to go. We've raised $115,000. We've got about just shy of $5,000 before we unlock the next level up. And we've got 529 backers. So if you're interested in Tharkold, definitely check it out. Tharkold is it's pretty cool. It's like a mix between like Hellraiser and Mad Max, but also has some kind of espionage, Cold War kind of stuff happening. So if apparently Tharkold is pretty different than the original Tharkold. So the Tharkold for Torg Eternity, they've changed things, and one of the big things I've seen from people in the Discord and just online is that they really enjoy the way Tharkold is different. Apparently, the original Torg Tharkold was like in Los Angeles. It's been moved to Russia, and it's got a really cool background and setting. So I think it fits really well with the themes. It seems to go really well. So check that out. Later on today, also at 1 p.m. Pacific time, we're going to be doing a Q&A with two of the writers, Brian Reeves and Lehman Crafton, and we're going to be going over common threats in Tharkold. So check that out at 1 o'clock Pacific time on this Twitch channel. So with that, let's switch over to the let's see. I'm capturing something I don't want in the background there. Let's see. Let's go like this. There we go. So let's get on to reading. So this is the finale of the Day One adventures. We've read all of them. We've read the entire book, and I'm actually excited to run this. I'm not sure when I'm gonna run it. I'm not gonna run it for Ulisses Con because I'm not comfortable with it yet. I'll probably run it for some friends first, and then once I'm a little bit more comfortable, I'll run some online games. So soon. So the first thing that all of these Day One adventures have is the Dramatis Personae, and what those are is they're kind of like your basic pre-generated characters that players are expected to play for this adventure, and it makes sense to do that because all of these adventures kind of happen on the same day, so you can't really have your own characters jump through all of them. So it makes sense to kind of have a bunch of pre-generated characters. If you're looking at this, the information in the brackets is information that once the characters have their moment of crisis, they become reality rated, and now they can use these special abilities. So this is takes place in Orrorsh, and we'll get to what that means exactly. But these are all the different characters. You can also find full character sheets for all of these on our website at ulysses-us.com. If you go into the download section, you can get full character sheets for all of these characters. There's like, I don't know, what is that? I don't know, like 40 characters, and they have full character sheets. You can also get the drama deck for pay what you want on Drive Through RPG. You can get the quick start, the Up the Creek quick start is pay what you want. The Day One adventures, this adventure, as well as the GM screen and archetypes are all pay what you want. So we really want people out there playing Torg, so please check that out. All right, so let's just get into it here. And welcome in the chat. If you are, I think I didn't update this. 1 second here. If you've played this before, let us know. Let me know how you did, like what your characters did. If you were a GM, let me know how your players did, and what worked and what you had a little bit of trouble with. So let's see. Day 1, Orrorsh. A formal wedding is scheduled to happen in 2 days at the small rural village of Chokmali. The characters are participants or guests making the trip in a rented bus. The trip is perilous. The road is empty and fraught with ill omens. At an out-of-the-way petrol station, the heroes encounter monsters for the first time and a survivor with information about what happened the night before. Chokmali itself is abandoned. The visitors must race against time to investigate what happened there, and to prepare for nightfall. When the sun sets, the monsters come out, whether the storm knights are ready or not. The village is home to a backup Stella and its guardian. Swarms of corrupted bats sweep across the countryside after dark. A powerful figure called the Tiller oversees the planting of Gosbog Field all too near Chokmali. The group must face all of these horrors and survive until morning. So if you're looking at the images here, the images that we've got on the screen are all images from the Tharkold crowdfunding. So if some of these grab your attention, that you definitely want to check that out. And that's on GameOnTabletop.com. Let me throw a link in the chat for those of you that are in here. There you go. That's actually a link for the first update, but check that out too. Scene 1, a bad trip. Standard scene. The characters are staying in Madurai on their way north to a small village named Chokmali for a wedding. Chokmali is a hometown of the groom, Rajan. Rajan, the bride, and her parents went on ahead in his car. The rest of the travelers hired a bus to get there, but they fell behind when the vehicle had mechanical troubles. Last night, one of the characters received a call from Rajan saying he was nearly home, but that unseasonal storms are forming. Chokmali is nestled in the jungle and reached by unpaved roads, which become quite treacherous during storms or at night, so it's important the bus arrive before dark. There are no more messages from Rajan in the morning, but mobile phone coverage is notoriously spotty there. In fact, the network went down completely last night, and this morning no one is getting signal, email, or anything else. Around Maduri, everything seems normal, but sorry, I just had something pop up here. Everything seems normal, but as soon as the group hits the road heading north, everyone aboard feels a weird tingle, like someone walking over their graves. Because Maduri is a hard point. The shiver passing through the potential storm knights marks them crossing from the core Earth reality within its borders into the Orrorsh zone that was established last night. Here's an image of some Gosbog crossing a bridge. It says the Gauntman's terrifying creatures spread quickly during the night of screams. The Orrorsh world laws and axioms are now in effect. Deal each hero an Orrorsh Cosm card. Hey, Michael, welcome. Michael says, that was a good intro. My 9-year-old daughter enjoyed it. Temple of the Doom Bridge is awesome. That's a good point. So when you played this with your daughter, did you kind of lighten it up a little bit? It seems like Orrorsh is pretty full of horror and terror. How did you deal with that with a 9-year-old? I know that's one thing. My son is 6, so we really haven't gotten into everything that we've played. We've played some D&D. It's been pretty PG-13, less than PG-13, PG. And so he looked at a picture of a vampire the other day from the Nosferatu movie, and that kind of freaked him out. So we're not quite there to horror yet. It looks like in the chat, Mike says she likes scary movies. It was PG-13, but I didn't go easy. Nice. So the ticking clock. Put 6 tokens on the table. Let the players know that each token represents several hours of time, and once all the tokens are gone, it grows dark and the roads become even more dangerous. In reality, this tracks the number of hours of daylight remaining. Orrorsh becomes much more dangerous in the dark. If a player uses the Sunset Cosm card, take 6 hours off the clock. If the players dally along the road, start reaching toward the tokens. Make a show of removing an hour if the players continue undeterred. Bad omens. The road to Chukmali isn't usually busy, but today the road is completely empty. At first, there were a few abandoned cars pushed off to the side of the road, or in some cases, still on the road, forcing the bus to dart around them. There isn't a soul in sight, as if everyone is at some festival rather than out traveling. There are a few carts mixed in with the cars, but no oxen in sight. If anyone of the group asks to stop the bus and check the cars, they start and run normally. There's no sign of the drivers or passengers. If the characters take too long to investigate or take the time to siphon petrol or search vehicles for tools, reach for the time tokens and remove one if they persist. And so if this isn't obvious already, it looks like this kind of takes place in India or somewhere around there. Michael says, these tokens freak the players out. If you run this, you must do this. This was a great idea from this author. Yeah, it sounds cool. The carriage. Further down the road, the jungle grows thicker and greener than the locals remember. Stranger still, they pass what looks like an old horse-drawn carriage along the side of the road rather than a car or motorcycle. It looks fancy, but dinged and worn from use. But there's no sign of horses or oxen. If the group takes the time to check it out, they find a kerosene lantern and a short sword, strength +2 damage, inside. There is blood in the carriage and on the sword, but no other evidence of what happened here. Rain and mud. As the journey progresses, the strange storm grows worse. The dirt road gets muddy and difficult. Have the driver make a challenging DN12 land vehicles test. On a failure, take away 3 time tokens as the bus gets stuck in the mud and must be freed. A success only drops 1 token to slowed travel. A good or outstanding success makes great time and no tokens are eliminated. On a mishap, the driver disconnects and can no longer operate the vehicle. In part, he's lost all muscle memory related to driving, and in part, the vehicle just won't start while he sits in the driver's seat. He can't reconnect until his moment of crisis arrives, and he becomes a storm knight. Another character may continue to drive to the petrol station. This is a situation many Ords face, hence the cars abandoned along the side of the road. Unlike a storm knight, Ords can only reconnect inside core Earth's axioms. So Ords, in case you haven't caught the other streams, Ords are ordinary people. So that's what that references. The petrol station. As the bus travels deeper into the rural surroundings, the road grows rockier. The jungle becomes even more oppressive, branches scraping along the side of the vehicle as it grinds forward. Finally, the road opens up into a clearing, which many locals recognize as the lone petrol station, servicing vehicles from outlying villages. The bus doesn't need fuel, but a top-off wouldn't hurt. Whether the bus stops or not, the occupants hear a child scream from inside the station, the first sign of anyone along the road at all. They may choose to keep going at the expense of a possible moment of crisis and vital information. Inside the station's garage is a young boy. He clings to a pulley on the ceiling used to lift engines. He's just out of reach of the monsters lunging at him from the ground below. The creatures look like desiccated human corpses with jungle vines entwined all throughout their rotting flesh. The few patches of rotting clothing on the bodies is strange, both Western and archaic. The things turn back to face the new arrivals and attack. Gospog of the first planting, 1 per 2 heroes. This is a moment of truth for the travelers. If they try to fend off the creatures or at least rescue the child, they experience a moment of crisis. Unfortunately, a Storm Knight in Orrorsh doesn't have quite as much protection as elsewhere thanks to the laws of perseverance. Arming up. At least finding weapons in the garage is a fairly simple matter. A very easy DN6 find test spots various hammers, pipes, or tools that work as well as improvised clubs. Strength +2 damage, become vulnerable on a miss. A good success spots tools with better reach or balance, dealing strength +2 damage with no extra consequences for a miss. And an outstanding result discovers a welding torch that can be lit and deals 12 damage. The torch is Tech Axiom 20 and has fuel for 1 minute of operation. It malfunctions on a roll of 2 or less and becomes useless on a mishap. Padre says, my daughter will be 6 later this year. She's not ready for Torg yet, but handled Savage Worlds okay. Michael says, GMs, resist temptation to add Gospog for PCs who just become Storm Knights. This fight is tough. Good advice. So what did they fight? Yeah, Gospel got the first point thing. Yeah. Jayash. If the young boy Jayash is rescued, he has quite a tale to tell. He and his parents lived in a home nearby until last night. In the dead of night, many of those creatures broke in. His parents bought Jayash time to escape and screamed for him to run. He saw his parents killed and ran weeping toward the road to hide in the garage. Let's see, Thornlord says, for Orrorsh, do the world laws affect the group as a whole, even when not in Orrorsh? For Orrorsh, do the world laws affect the group as a whole, even when not in Orrorsh? I think if you're not in Orrorsh, the world laws there aren't gonna mess with you, right? You're gonna be subject to whatever world laws of the cosm you're in. So if you're in Core Earth, you're affected by those world laws and so on. A standard persuasion test calms Jayash down, and he remembers a few more details. There was another figure with the monsters, wearing a mask and not covered in vines like they were. He was speaking English and called the creature Gospog. The man ordered some of the Gospog to take his parents' bodies north, assigned a few to chase Jayash, and took the rest to continue the night's work. From this point on, Jayash clings to whichever hero shows him the most kindness. He mostly remains quiet and tries to stay out of the way or help out if he can. If the travelers want to try to go back to Maduri after hearing Jayash's tale, let them try. After 10 to 20 minutes of driving, the road simply disappears, swallowed by a wall of thick jungle. The bus must be driven in the reverse to get back to the petrol station. The jungle doesn't even leave enough room to turn around. The side trip costs a time token. On the edge. There's one last problem to face before reaching the village. Part of the road runs down a narrow, swollen, raging river, and one section has partially fallen away. What's left is barely wide enough for the bus, and the weight of the vehicle could cause further crumbling once it starts across. Getting to the other side is a dramatic skill resolution. All steps test land vehicles. Steps A and D are standard DN10, but steps B and C are difficult DN12. There's no reason for anyone but the driver to be aboard the bus as it crosses, and characters walking ahead can even try to guide the bus and cooperate with their own land vehicles test. After 5 rounds, if the bus hasn't completed Step D, the section of road collapses. The driver has time to jump out without a test before the bus tumbles into the river below. Losing the bus eliminates 2 more time tokens, as the unhappy wedding party must walk the rest of the way to the village. If the test succeeds, they keep the bus, and no time is lost. Note that the heroes might choose to simply leave the bus on the safe side of the road. They lose the 2 tokens for walking, but the bus is still there on the road if they manage to return for later. Let's see another suggestion by Michael Roderick. GMs, if the PC is attached to Jayash, you might consider threatening the child to draw out some pathos. Welcome to Orrorsh. Nice. Yeah, I found that that can be great. You just got to really be careful. Children in danger is one of those things that can really, that really literally triggers people. So definitely be careful when doing this. I mean, I know a lot of Orrorsh is horror and terror, so definitely make sure that your players understand that as well, and make sure that your players are okay with that sort of thing. I know some people will not be okay with threatening a child, and so it's definitely something you got to talk to your players about. Yeah, Michael says know your players for sure. When darkness falls. If the last time token is eliminated, move on to scene 2, skipping anything else from scene 1. The heroes didn't get a chance to deal with. They enter Chukmali just as night falls, so they don't have time to investigate before the monsters arrive. Scene 2, Home Sweet Home. No one comes to meet the heroes as they arrive in Chukmali. The small town is silent and empty, much to the horror of those who have family here. If the time tokens from scene 1 haven't run out, there's still daylight remaining. The new arrivals may search the house of the village looking for survivors or clues to what happened. If darkness has already fallen, describe the village and then skip to scene 3. The heroes are in trouble. The village. Chukmali is tucked on the hillside near the edge of the jungle. Or it was, but now the thick vegetation is thickened and encroached to engulf some of the outlying buildings and touches most of those in the center of town. Previously, the most notable feature of the village was the expansive rice fields to the east, closer to the flooding river that threatened the bus on the way here. The fields are accessed from a wide path that winds down the hill. There's a public well in the center of town. There wasn't central power or telephones here before, and mobile phone coverage was weak at best. Some of the houses had portable generators, a fact many locals know. The largest house in the village belongs to Rajan's family. It's 2 stories tall, sturdily built and brightly painted and decorated for the upcoming wedding. See the scavenging in Chukmali table for what the characters may find. There's also a ghastly new addition to the village, the Hanging Bones. See below. Here's a little map of the village. Looks pretty small. Searching the village. The houses of the village are empty of people, but evidence abounds that something terrible happened last night. Find lets the investigators scavenge for items, or evidence analysis discovers clues about what happened. Searching or scavenging uses up a time token. If enough are left, the newcomers have time for multiple tests. If the evidence analysis test fails, the examiner finds bloodstains, broken doors, shattered windows, and damaged furniture in every house checked. The walls and what's left of doors have small scratches all over them. A success determines each house was broken into. The occupants fought back the best they could, and the bodies were dragged outside and down the path toward the rice fields for some unfathomable reason. A good success discovers small bits of vine, implicating Gospog creatures, like those encountered at the petrol station. An outstanding success reveals that the battery-powered clocks all stopped at 3:42 a.m. There's nothing wrong with the clocks. In fact, the clock begins ticking again for about 10 seconds if a storm night fidgets with the batteries. All the vehicles expected by the natives, several motorcycles and Rajan's car, are still in town, but an easy DN8 tracking test finds furrows in the muddy road to the west toward Dindigul, where someone drove in or out. If the heroes continue down the road, see leaving town. In Rajan's family, there's one more difference beyond the wedding decorations. A survivor. The only living person in the village lies wounded on the floor, unconscious and bleeding. He's Caucasian with brown hair and an elaborate mustache and beard. He's barefoot and wearing only trousers, though his chest is wrapped in makeshift bandages. An easy DN8 first aid test brings him around to answer some questions. The Victorian. The stranger's name is Edward Grant, and he speaks English with a pronounced British accent. At first, he's confused about where he is, can't remember how he came to be there or what happened. On the other hand, he's desperate to know what time it is, specifically how long until nightfall. As Edward calms down, he remembers and shares more and more. Last night there was an attack. He remembers swarms of vicious bats and decaying corpses, and he knows corpses he knows are called Gospog. They were led by a creature called the Tiller. Everyone was killed, and the Tiller took the bodies down to the rice field to the east. Here's the scavenging in Chakmali table. So it happens based on your result. If your find result of failing, standard, good, and outstanding, you can find different items like a kerosene lamp, farming tools, barricade, materials, a generator, shotgun, hunting rifle, and so on. I really like how throughout most of these adventures they have these little scavenging tables, which I think is cool. I'm a fan of sort of like post-apocalyptic stuff, and so having scavenging is fun. Gant isn't from Earth. He's from a world named Gaia. His world was invaded much like this one, and a dread figure known as the Gotman turned into a realm of nightmares and endless horror and corruption known as Orrorsh. He knows the basic workings of reality, about storm nights, and a few things about what's happening in the rice fields. The Gospog the Tiller uses are from Gaia, brought here through constructs called maelstrom bridges. He can make more, and that's what he plans to do with all the corpses. The altar in town is called a Stella, and serves as a boundary for Orrorsh. This Stella is a backup, so destroying it won't affect reality, but may still draw the wrath of the Gauntman. Stella usually have guardians, so Gant warns everyone to stay well away from it. The Tiller and his creatures are likely sensed living people in the village and are awaiting nightfall to attack. Gant doesn't think they'll get far enough away if they run, and suggests fortifying one of the houses until sunrise instead. Gant doesn't realize it, but he himself is a monster. He arrived via the Maelstrom Bridge and murdered many, including Rajan. When darkness falls, he'll become a beast of some kind of monstrous bat and kill again. He begins to remember if his questioners treat him with kindness, or as soon as the light of day begins to fade. He shakes with horror and weeps when he comes to this last realization. He doesn't wish to kill or be killed. If the heroes decide to kill him, he puts up a weak resistance, but succumbs. No combat is needed, only to rise again 5 days later, unless he's killed with silver. A very hard DN16 persuasion test convinces Gant that his death is for the best. He suggests silver as an effective weapon against him. There is silver in the house, none of it in the form of a weapon, but definitely usable to finish the deed while Gant is cooperating. That's a cool encounter. I like that. The Hanging Bones. Near the edge of the village's square clearing, impossible to miss, is a grisly structure. From a distance, it looks like a figure made of bounded together sticks. A little closer up, it becomes clear that it is made from bones, distinctly human bones, and fused together into a kind of altar. The bones still have traces of blood on them. The sight crackles with a kind of power that all the heroes can feel. More than that, investigators definitely feel like something is watching them, and a low growl from inside the jungle or a glimpse of red eyes alert them that some kind of creature stalks nearby. The altar is a stela, actually a backup stela in this case. The heroes have no way of knowing what that means. If they try to physically destroy the foul thing or to pull it apart, they're actually attempting to uproot the stela. That immediately starts a dramatic skill resolution and brings the creature tasked with guarding it. See Attack the Guardian. Regardless of how the heroes try to destroy or dismantle the stela, they test reality with a standard difficulty to complete each step. A step back means Hecaton, the darkness device, notices the intrusion and uses a dim thread to move 2 Gospog for each hero from a nearby fields into the village to protect the stela. This image says Gospog are frightening creatures of supernatural evil that emit an aura of fear. It shows a guy with a knife fighting one of these. Skull. Looks like he's got some moss growing from his head. The Gospog that is, and a flower. Looks pretty cool. If the attempt fails, blood oozes from the altar itself, and the skulls fuse into it, emit blood-curdling screams. A physical wave of force pushes the Storm Knights away. If the heroes withdraw, there's no further effect, although if the Guardian is still active, it pursues them. If they try again, Hecaton reanimates every destroyed creature and sends on another wave of Gospog as reinforcements. If the Storm Knights succeed, the bones crack and burst apart. Each hero gains 2 possibilities, a boon from Core Earth itself for their role in fighting back against the invaders. This was a backup stela, so the zone doesn't collapse or change, but it's still an impressive victory, one the Tiller wishes to avenge. Preparing defenses. Even on a failed find test, the Storm Knights find materials to board over windows, cover doors with furniture, and get lights going, either through a portable generator or kerosene lamps. An easy DN8 strength test builds up the barricade. Each level of success gives it 1 wound, maximum of 3. Storm Knights inside a barricade house gain concealment. If they fight back, attacking through the windows, cracks in the doorways, and so on, the cover plus 6 toughness, and cover plus 6 toughness. Anyone who isn't trying to fight back can't be targeted at all. No more than 3 villains can attack a character who's fighting back. There's just not enough room for more. Any unoccupied villains try to break in. They roll on a regular attack against an inanimate object DN6 with toughness 12. Once the barricade's wounds are eliminated, the antagonists may enter the house and attack normally. The Gospog Fields. If any Storm Knights choose to follow the trail to the east to check the rice fields, each must make a DN8 stealth test to gain vantage on the grisly spectacle below without being seen. Otherwise, they see the Tiller, but he sees them as well, and immediately dispatches his boss, Gosbog, to chase intruders back to the village and destroy them all. There are dozens of hunched figures working the former rice fields. Most of them are Gosbog, digging shallow, muddy graves in the fields or dragging bodies down the sodden rows. The figure stands apart, a hunchback wearing what looks like Victorian-styled clothing and a stylized mask with a ghoulish, frowning face. When the heroes first see him, he's driving his clawed fingers into a corpse's chest, pushing something into the cavity. Then he waves to one of the Gosbog and orders it in a formal-sounding English to plant the body down the row he's gesturing. The true horror of this operation is its scale. There are piles of hundreds, perhaps thousands of dead bodies in the fields, and evidence that many more have already been buried here. It uses up a time token getting down to the fields and back to the village. It's probably not a good idea to engage the Gosbog and their leader, Tiller, here if the heroes have a choice. It's also possible the heroes may be ambushed by the Stella Guardian on their way back. See Tiller, page 12, Gosbog of the first planting, 5 per hero. Attack of the Guardian. The backup Stella in Chukmali has a full-time guardian, the flayed corpse of a large tiger repurposed by the Darkness device to prowl the area and destroy any intruders. It slinks through the dark jungle around the village. It attacks immediately if the heroes attempt to uproot the Stella or if anyone is foolish enough to venture into the village. Otherwise, it stalks the heroes and strikes if an opportunity arises. If it attacks from surprise, give the heroes a chance to spot it in time. A hard DN14 combined find test. If they fail, it ambushes them. The Storm Knights don't get to play cards into their action pool on their first turn. The Stella Guardian. See page 143. Leaving town. If the Storm Knights choose to drive away rather than fortify and hold out through the night via either road, they manage to travel about an hour before the vehicle becomes completely mired in a thick tract of mud. The trees close in as if the jungle itself were against the escapes. They have just enough time to return to the village before dark, or press on and face whatever the night brings in the jungle. Here's another image of one of the characters standing in front of a pillar made of skulls. The jungles are filled with ominous totems constructed by the Gotman's grim forces. Wherever the wanderers end up, the creatures from the final scene attack them and find them and attack. Although only half the Gosbog make the trip. The bat swarm, see scene 3, can't be outrun. The Gosbog can be outrun for a time, but the corrupted bat swarm and the Gantman and Gant quickly catch up. Although the Gosbog are slower, they are relentless and never need to rest. Scene 3, Dead by Dawn. Night has fallen, and now the survivors must fight for their lives. Depending on how the previous scenes played out, the Storm Knights are likely either barricaded inside the village, on the road somewhere in the jungle, or just arriving in Chukmali. Ready or not, now the monsters are coming. Devil Bats. As the last of the light fades from behind the storm clouds, an unearthly chorus of shrill screeches erupts across the jungle, and a mass of innumerable large bats winds down into the sky like a ribbon. The bats spread out to form a thick blanket, illuminated by occasional flashes of lightning. The screeches grow louder as the mass approaches. If any characters are on watch and witness the bats approach, they notice the creatures flinch and dart away from lightning whenever it flashes, a clue to their aversion to light of any kind. The bats cover the entire village, but won't come within 2 meters of a light source. That won't stop them from attacking anyone out in the dark. If the swarm of bats suffers enough damage to KO it, the bats separate and fly away. If Edward Gant hasn't been dealt with, he leads the attack of the bats and specifically targets light sources. If he's slain, the swarm disperses immediately. Nice. The Gosbog arrive in 2 waves, drawn from the monsters still the Gosbog fields. The first wave contains 3 Gosbog per hero and arrives shortly after the attack of Gant and the bats. The defenders have time to recover shock and attempt first aid between the attacks. The second wave arrives after another lull to recover shock. This wave contains the tiller and any remaining Gospog from the fields, probably 2 per hero, unless their numbers were cut down earlier. This is the final assault. Any survivors remain untouched for the rest of the night. Epilogue. When the sun rises, the storms have settled, and the remaining members of the party have time to get back to the relative safety of Madari before darkness falls again. Any survivors are helping to fortify and defend Madari from the tides of monsters that now swarm across almost all of India. The situation is beyond grim. Millions are dead, and untold millions more are still in the clutches of the Godman. Aircraft of any kind are a rarity these days, so it causes quite a stir across the city when an advanced jet swoops in. And then its wings rotate so it can hover to land in an open market square. The wary-looking American disembarks and asks to meet the gallant group who returned from Chukmali specifically. He introduces himself as Quinn Sebastian. I'm here as an envoy from the Delphi Council, an organization formed to fight these invaders and free the Earth. Things are bad all over, but this is where it's worse. The Gauntman is the most powerful, the most evil of these High Lords. Will you join us? Together, maybe we can beat him. And if we can beat him, we can beat the rest of them. Nice. That's a nice little session. Here's some threats. We'll kind of read some of the the description and then some of their special abilities and perks. Gospog of the First Planting. Gospog of the First Planting are human corpses entwined with rotting vegetation and putrid flesh. They are common to all realms, a gracious gift of death from the Gauntman to his fellow reality raiders. They are strangely adaptable and function without contradiction in every realm. Their special abilities are Claws, Fear, Mindlessness, Relentless, they ignore shock, and they're undead. The Tiller. The Tiller is a broad-shouldered hunchback in a tattered Victorian cloak. There are traces of mold and fungus growing in different spots around his clothing and his flesh. His face is obscured by a mask. If the mask is removed, it is revealed the Tiller has no face, only a disgusting growth of mold where his features would be and a slit for a mouth. Nice. See, Michael says, Gospog can be tough for PCs with no XP due to their relentless feature, which is they ignore shock. Yeah, nice. Padre says, yeah, but they go down to 1 wound, which helps. So the Tiller has, he's got a Cloak of Darkness. The Tiller gains a bonus to his toughness equal to the current darkness penalty. And Mold Touch. Tiller can make a melee attack using his alteration skill. If he succeeds, the target is stymied by growing mold. A good success makes the target very stymied. An outstanding success KOs the target until a first aid test frees the target's face from the foul growth. Nice. The Corrupted Bat Swarm. This huge swarm of bats blots out the sky. Each bat has glowing red eyes and rotting, blistered skin. Eliminating one or even dozens of bats has no real effect on the swarm as a whole. It's got bite and claws. Each round, when it acts, anyone inside during any portion of its movement suffers 2 shock. The swarm may make a single attack against barricades or fortifications, dealing shrink +1 damage. It's got echolocation, flight, and a swarm. Unarmed and crushing weapons deal base damage normally and automatically without a hit test. Area attacks deal damage normally. Bullets, blades, or weapons that can't hit dozens of creatures at once deal no damage at all. Ouch. Let's see. Michael says, Cloak of Darkness. GMs, this is not armor, so armor-piercing weapons don't help. Let's see. So looking at the Cloak of Darkness from Tiller. Yeah, so it says Tiller gains a bonus to his toughness equal to his current darkness penalty. Padre says only toughness 8 and most guns and weapons are about 13, so standard hit drops 1. You're talking about the Bat Swarm or Gospog? Yeah, Gospog, yeah. Michael says, true, but most of the found items deal less than that. Gotcha. All right. Edward Gant. Gant is a curse to become a rampaging beast as darkness falls, part man and part bat. During the day, he's nearly lucid, but suffering from memory loss and wounds. At night, he becomes a pure animal and viciously attacks even those who are kind to him during the day. During the day, he loses all all special abilities, except for lycanthrope. Quote, "If you value your lives, then run. The accursed creatures who hounds my every footstep has no mercy." He's got some armor, Cloak of Darkness. He's got echolocation, flight, and lycanthrope. Silver damage deals +4 damage, or silver weapons deal +4 damage against this creature. Wounds inflicted by other types of weapons automatically heal at the end of each scene. Stella Guardian. This particular guardian is a large Bengal tiger. Its corpse corrupted and repurposed by Hecaton to watch over a backup Stella. Although a mindless undead creature, the guardian stalks and hunts with the same instincts that served it as a living predator. There's an image of Shilpa Ravenkar. It's got fear. This unnatural beast looks like it should be dead and decaying. Test willpower or spirit or become very stymied. Large. Attacks against the guardian gain a +2 bonus due to its size. Mindless. The creature is immune to intimidation and taunt and telepathic powers. It's also relentless, so it ignores shock, and it's also undead. Well, cool. So that is the finale of day one adventures. Like I said, I'm really excited to run this. Thank you everyone for your advice in this chat and all the others. And once again, if you have not backed the Tharkold crowdfunding, check that out. Oh, where did my Chrome go? Oh, I took it off. Well, check that out if you haven't backed it. Here's another one. Maybe. Nope. So with that, I'm Robert Aducci, and we will see you in 2 hours, just over 2 hours. Actually, no, it's almost 12, so at 1. So just over an hour and 20 minutes, we are going to do a live Q&A with Brian Reeves and Lehman Crafton. They're two of the writers that worked on Tharkold. So we're going to talk about the common threats of Tharkold. Let's see. Michael says, this is a good scenario for a GM who wants to dip their toe into the Torg waters. It shows a lot of the core mechanics, and it shows how ordinary people become Storm Knights. And of course, the way it is written makes it easy to invoke a sense of foreboding. Yeah, I really feel like they're all pretty good. They all have sort of add different elements of Tharkold, of Torg. Yeah. So I think one of these days, whether I do it for the stream or just for my own, I kind of run a Patreon for myself. I might run this. So we'll see. These probably all take about a session. At least the single act ones, I think would take 3 or 4 hours at least. So those could be some good sessions. So with that, once again, I'm Robert Aducci. Please check out the Tharkold crowdfunding happening now on Game On Tabletop, and please come back in an hour and 20 minutes for the live Q&A. All right, I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.